Hello. So after a 1 week hiatus, due to a lot of pressure on my end over here, we're back. We're back and better than ever. At least I hope so. So as you know, usually we try to do over here things that have to do with the Tanchuma, or with the MyDrash in general. And when I first thought about, Vayit Hanan, which is our next parsha, I was very excited. It's a packed parsha, but the MyDrash is very, very short. At least the Tanchuma is very short, and it all talks about Moshe begging to be allowed into Israel, and it's heartbreaking. It's MyDrash. It only has two problems. First of all, it's very long, so to cover all the nuances there would be extremely difficult. And it really, you have to look at the complete package to get sort of the full blast of it. And second of all, we've already talked several times over the past few weeks about Moshe and about his character and about his leadership. So I felt that sort of would be good to sort of deviate from that. But for those of you, for those of you who have not been following until now, and definitely for those who have, if you have a chance to find a version that you can like in Hebrew if you feel comfortable with it, or in English if you need that translation, it's really a beautiful midrash. So I highly recommend it, the Tanchuma and Vayit Hanan. Instead, I thought we'd talk about another very famous event that takes place in our parsha, and that is the Shema. Right? So Shema, the parsha we all read in the morning and in the evening during davening, perhaps the most famous section of the Torah that competes probably only with the first verses of Genesis and the Ten Commandments in terms of its how well known these verses are, is the Shema. So I want to quickly read the Shema. We all know it, but I'm going to read it anyway, just so that we sort of are on the same page over here. And I want us to sort of think about, what does the Shema mean? We'll follow the interpretation of the Orach Chaim, sort of an interesting idea. So first of all, let's read Shema. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Echad. Here, Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. So here we have a declaration, right? Declaration about our faith. And then, Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elohecha, B'chol levocha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol meodecha. So you shall love your Hashem, your God, with all your heart, all your soul, and all your meodecha, all your ability. So, which Chazal interpret as referring to monetary, like financial obligation. V'hayu advarim ha'ele, asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha. May these things that I command you today be on your heart. V'shinantam levanecha. So you should tell them to your children, you'll talk about them. You'll talk with them when you sit down in your home, or when you're walking on the way, when you lie down and when you rise. You'll tie them as a symbol on your arm, and they shall be placed between your eyes. This is, of course, referring to the tefillin. As we know, that the Shema section is also one of the things that's wrapped up inside the tefillin. And you'll put them also on your mezuzah. Right? We know that the Shema and Vayam Shema, which we will read next week, is both of these are part of what's inside the klaf, parchment that's inside the mezuzah and inside the tefillin. So first of all, if we look at this whole story, we'll notice that there's a very big difference between, let's say, the first verse and what follows. First verse is a declaration of belief. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Echad. What follows seems to be, you can think of it as sort of supporting material. What do I mean by supporting? So immediately after that Shema declaration, we are told that we need to love God. Still, can be thought of as sort of a description of the relationship, and then things begin to be more and more concrete. alevavecha. May these things be on your heart. So it's already commanding you, to make sure that these things remain in your awareness. You need to tell them to your children. Talk about them when you're in your home and when you're walking, when you lie down, when you rest. Tie them on your arm, put them between your eyes, write them on their mezuzah. So we go from the extremely abstract, extremely, just the declaration of our belief, to we end up with a very pragmatic, very technical thing to do, right? And in the middle we have exactly the middle, where you teach your son. So you're teaching and you're putting it first on your heart, and you pass it on to your child. Then you make sure to talk about it wherever you are, and then you make sure that it's written, on your body and also on your house. So you can see this gradual sort of move from the very bombastic, statement at the beginning, and to the more practical, mundane expressions of the thing. And it's only natural that it will be this way, right? We need to take these big ideas and we need to translate them into something that occurs in our lives. We don't want these ideas to remain completely in the abstract, completely just in our minds. We see this also in what Chazal say about the connection between this parsha and the second parsha of Shema, the Vayayim Shema parsha. So Chazal say this is about Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim. This is about accepting the yoke of God's authority over us. And then the next parsha is Kabbalat Ol Mitzvot, is accepting the yoke not of God's kingship over us, but of the mitzvot, of the practical mitzvot. So like, even though there's this gradual shift within Shema, it's still all talking about this one big idea. The next parsha talks about detailing this idea into, 613. It doesn't mention the number, but that's the number of mitzvot, breaking it down into these, small slivers of actions that we do as part of our commitment to God. Okay, so that's even more removed from the big bombastic statement, which, as I said before, we need to do because Judaism doesn't believe in being an abstract religion, a religion that's based on your heart or just in your heart. It also demands specific manifestations of these ideas, and so in order to make sure that these ideas don't just remain a subjective idea, but something that actually affects the world. Okay, and that's a topic for a different discussion. But what I do want to talk about today is another aspect in which there's a very strong contrast between the first big statement of Shema and the rest of Shema. In a sense, that first statement is supported by everything that follows it, right? If you look at those things that we're supposed to do, they're all ways of perpetuating this idea, right? First of all, we have to perpetuate it inside ourselves and our heart. We have to teach our children to perpetuate it to the next generation. It has to be expressed through the tefillin, it has to be expressed through the mezuzah, it has to be written down somewhere, right? Somewhere that we can read and touch and relate to. So you see how, in a sense, the Shema as one parsha, in a sense, is like a program that's designed to copy itself, right? It's almost like a DNA, where the DNA doesn't only encode the information that has to do about the person, but it also, or the entity that it's trying to encode, it also encodes the method in which you can replicate it, right? In other words, the DNA holds inside it both those functionalities, both the thing and the replication mechanism. And in that sense, Shema does the same thing, right? It has this big idea of our connection to God, and it also has the method in which this idea will be maintained in the world. You're going to make sure that you maintain it with yourself, and that will facilitate being able to pass it on to your children, and that will also facilitate being able to, put it on your door and put it on your like in these physical things, which will give it a physical manifestation. Okay, so we see how the Shema really has that ability to maintain itself. This is a very interesting thing because we see all sorts of discussions about sort of what are the important parts of Shema, what are the less important parts. Clearly, the first pasuk is the most important, and according to halacha, if you're saying Shema, the only part you must have kavana and must have intent in thinking about what you're saying. That's the first verse. Everything else is it's good to have intent in everything you say in davening, but that's the only part that's a necessity, a must, and that makes sense because that's the declaration. That's the essence of what you're saying. Everything else is talking about how are we going to make sure that this idea doesn't get lost along the way. So that's first step. Now that we've made that clear separation between the first verse and all the rest, I want to talk about that first verse. The first verse says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Echad. Shema, hear us, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. And the question is, what does that mean? So the Orach Chaim, for example, asks what, so he says, why didn't you just say Hashem Elokeinu Echad? Hashem our God is one. Well, why do you need this? Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. So he gives an answer which we're going to get to right now, but first I'd like to strengthen his question. There seems to be a tension between Hashem Elokeinu and Hashem Echad. This in a sense also is the answer to his question, which he brings. Elokeinu means our God, right? It means that there's something personal about that relationship. Hashem is not just the God, Hashem Elokim, right? Which is what we would say, like if we were to say he is a God or the God. Elokim. We say Elokeinu, he is our God. Then we say Hashem Echad. Hashem is one. So there's a lot of ways of understanding what it means that he is one. But the Orach Chaim understands it in one of the more sort of obvious ways, that there is no other God, right? Just like we say at the end of Aleinu L'Shabeach, we say, V'yom ha'u yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. And, in that day Hashem will be one and His name will be one, in which we say, this is part of Aleinu, where we talk about how there's all these idol worshippers and that they don't worship Hashem, and one day, everyone will recognize that He is one. That there is only one. There are no multiple gods. Paganism is wrong. There's only one central force that drives the universe, and that is God, and to Him alone we are committed. So there is this tension over here, and between God being our God, but that seems to indicate two things: A, that there might be more gods, right? Because this is our God, and there's some other guy's God, or it could indicate that He is only God to us, where we know that He created the entire universe, right? So He's not only our God. Yet on the other hand, we have Hashem Echad, saying He is one, and being one means that He's not, doesn't belong to anything or anyone. There's only one of Him. So every time we talk about a God, we're talking about Him. There's no personalization in this whole thing. So what does this mean? And I think what I also want us to try and understand, which I will get to as I continue, is why is this verse so important? Meaning, why is it that we say it twice a day, and why is it that people over the generations and then over centuries, when Jews were persecuted, so many of them die with this verse on their lips? What is so important about this statement? There are so many statements of belief and connection to God in the Torah. Why was this one put on such a pedestal? Why was this one made the center of the Jewish daily existence? So the Orach Chaim explains that the tension we just pointed to about sort of this two ways of looking at God, as if He's talking about Him as if He's ours, or talking about Him as if He is one, is precisely the two aspects of our relationship with Him that we want to talk about. Because on the one hand, there really is only one God. If there's only one God, that also means that in terms of our relationship, we really don't have any choice. Not us, not anyone else in the world, right? If we want to be sort of truthful, then we only have one God, and there's only one option, and so we turn to this God. And in a sense, if we wanted to have any kind of relationship with our Creator, we only have one address to go to. There is no several options to go through. But the problem with a relationship like that, a relationship that's built on um, a necessity, there were no other options. There was no free choice over here. The only God around is Hashem. It's just the way the world is. So there's a problem there, right? A relationship that's built on being forced to do something, not forced like in the sense of a master forcing a slave, sort of in a way that the slave doesn't want to do something, but simply because imagine that the slave is looking for his master, but there's only one such master around, and so he's forced by the rules of reality to locate the only one. There's a problem there because it means that our relationship with God, it doesn't depend on anything. That's also a good thing, right? It means that it's not doesn't depend on anything. It also can be a good thing, the fact that we don't condition our relationship with God on anything. But that lack of conditioning also means that there's something missing in the relationship. If that was where we would stop. Because what makes our relationships with people important is the choices that we make to have that relationship. Right? We don't choose our family, and sometimes really you find that within families relationships are tense because people were put together and forced to be together because they were family, even though personality-wise they couldn't work together. If there was only one God and that more appropriate, we find that people that actually, my previous statement is a bit too simplistic in practice, because in practice people find so many gods to worship, whether these are real gods of religions like Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, etc., or if you want to go to the more sort of like to relax the term a bit, you could talk about certain ideals, hedonism, and all sorts of philosophies that people follow blindly, eventually, and sort of never veer from the path. And even atheism is a form of religion in the sense that it makes a statement about what reality is and tries to sort of derive a way of life based on it. So people in practice live in lots of religions and lots of gods to believe in. And so there is a function of choice of what we choose to believe in. But what we're saying, therefore, now that we bring sort of these two sides together, what we're saying in Shema Yisrael is we're saying, Hashem, we believe that you are the one and only God. But we also choose you to be our God. We are, in a sense, we're proud that you are our God. True, we don't really have a choice. We believe that you're there, and we believe that this is the right way to live. So in a sense, we don't have a choice. But you know something? We're happy with the fact that we don't have a choice. We're happy with the fact that of all the virtual choices that we had out there, the one that happens to be true is one that we also believe in. Okay? Because we could have also chosen to be, let's take a very extreme example. We could have chosen instead to be Nazis, right? Or some other terrible, or we could choose to be, psychotic serial killers, right? Believing in some strange, blood god or devil worshippers, right? We're saying to God, we believe that you are the only God, and we also believe that it's really great that you are the only God, that you are our God. We choose you, right? Even if you weren't the only God, we would choose this religion. We're trying to somehow sort of like, do two contradicting things at the same time. We're trying to accept the fact that God is what God is, and at the same time say, but we would choose this person anyway. In a sense, it's really like a family again. Many of us, for those fortunate of us who've grown up in families which are, supportive and good, give good examples and give good sort of like, figures that you want to follow and people that care for you and people that you can appreciate, you end up, looking back, at different points in your life and saying, I didn't choose my parents, but I'm so happy I was born to them. And it's kind of a strange statement, right? Because you don't know what would have happened otherwise. Maybe you would have been, in a better family, in a worse family, or you might have thought completely differently, if you were born in different circumstances. but you say to yourself, I'm happy with what I have. This is my family. Hashem Elokeinu, right? It's not just the family I happen to be born into. This is my family, and I'm proud to be it. I walk proud, knowing that this is who I belong to. And so, when we say Shema Yisrael, what we're saying basically is, this is our pledge of allegiance to God. We're saying, this is how we were born. This is the world we were born into, Hashem. But we're proud to have been born into this world. And we're proud to be your people. And therefore, and proud to believe in you. I'll just finish up by saying that there's a beautiful midrash in Masechet Balachot, page 6, where it says that Hashem too, just like we do, Hashem also wears tefillin. And in Hashem's tefillin, the verses all talk about how unique the people of Israel are. And I think it's trying to say the exact same thing. In other words, just like Shema is saying that God is unique, but that we chose Him, even though He's unique, Hashem is saying the same thing about Israel. He's saying, on the one hand, I chose you. On the one hand, I could have chosen anybody, right? If I would have chosen differently, Hashem says, that would have been fine. But on the other hand, there was something special about the people of Israel, something inherently special that made them or the patriarchs deserve to be chosen. So once again, you have here this merging of sort of destiny, of a plan that cannot be changed. This is just the way the world is supposed to evolve, versus a choice. Point where Hashem says, but I choose this plan. Even though it's, as it is, the plan that's supposed to be in the way that I created the world, I'm happy every moment to support that plan, to sign off and say, yes, this is how things are supposed to be. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and really try to get a hold of that Midrash, the Chuma.